For more than half a century, there's been this haunting question for thousands of veterans. Did a chemical they were exposed to in a war long ago plant some kind of ticking time bomb in their cells? Well, it looks like science may finally have the answer. So let's get right into it and see what this brand new study is telling us about Agent Orange's hidden fingerprint.
You know, this isn't a story that happens overnight. It's one that unfolds across decades. We're talking about a poison from the Vietnam War, and a mystery so deep, the only way to solve it was to look inside our very own DNA. The story was right there the whole time, just waiting to be read.
All right, so here's the central mystery we're unpacking. For 50 years, the challenge has been this. Can you draw a straight line from a chemical exposure in the Vietnam War to a rare, aggressive cancer showing up in veterans today?
To really get this, we have to talk about the chemical itself. Agent Orange was, basically, a super powerful herbicide. The goal was pretty simple: clear the jungles so enemy forces had nowhere to hide. But here's the catch. It was contaminated with a nasty form of dioxin, a toxin that we now know can seriously mess with how our cells work.
And the scale here is it's staggering. We are talking about roughly 2.6 million U.S. service members who might have been exposed to this stuff. This isn't some small incident. It's a massive health issue that's affected an entire generation.
Now, this timeline is what makes the whole thing so incredibly tricky. The exposure happened more than 50 years ago, but the cancer diagnoses are happening now. That huge gap in time is exactly why it's been so unbelievably hard to prove the connection.
But then, recently, scientists and doctors started noticing something. A pattern, a really disturbing one. A specific, rare type of cancer kept popping up in these veterans, and it just wasn't behaving like it was supposed to.
So, the cancer is called myelodysplastic syndromes, or MDS for short. In simple terms, it's a cancer of the bone marrow, and here is the crucial thing to know about it. It's almost always a disease that hits people late in life, when they're in their 70s.
But that's not what was happening with these veterans, not at all. This new study found that the vets exposed to Agent Orange were getting MDS years earlier than everybody else. That was the first huge clue that something was very, very different with this group.
And it didn't stop there. It wasn't just that they were getting sick earlier. The disease itself was more vicious. Exposed veterans were an incredible 80% more likely to have their cancer get worse or turn into leukemia within just the first 2 years. The numbers were painting a really grim picture.
But look, having a pattern is one thing. To really crack this 50-year-old case, scientists needed a smoking gun, indisputable proof. And they found it. Not in some dusty archive, but literally encoded in the DNA of the veterans themselves.
So, after all this time, what is that definitive link? Well, it's a direct line, connecting the poison that fell from the sky all those years ago to the cancer now growing in their cells.
The proof, it turns out, is genetic. The researchers found that exposed veterans were twice as likely to have major, high-risk problems with their chromosomes. But, and this is the real kicker, they also found a very specific set of gene mutations that just kept showing up in the exposed group. These are it. These are the genetic fingerprints that Agent Orange left behind.
I love how the lead researcher, Dr. Michael Sekeres, put it. He basically said that Agent Orange didn't just give someone cancer on the spot. It did something much more subtle. It added a mutation, just one little change. But that one mutation was enough to start a chain reaction that, 5 decades later, ends in cancer.
But the discoveries didn't stop with the genetics. As the scientists dug deeper into the data, another, even more troubling pattern started to emerge. It turns out the burden of this exposure wasn't shared equally at all.
So take a look at this. The study uncovered this really stark racial disparity. About 20% of the veterans who reported being exposed to Agent Orange were Black. But here's the jaw-dropping part. When they analyzed the data, Black veterans were nearly 3 times more likely to have been exposed.
And Dr. Sekeres pointed out that these numbers are totally out of whack with the demographics of who actually served in Vietnam. His thinking is that Black service members may have been disproportionately placed in more vulnerable roles, putting them in harm's way and leading to much higher rates of exposure. It points to a much deeper systemic problem.
So, okay, this science is a massive breakthrough. But what does it actually mean for the veterans who are sick right now, today? Well, this is where the story moves from the laboratory into the real world, into a fight for justice.
For years, this has been the bureaucratic wall so many veterans have run into.
They get sick with MDS, but because there was no official link to their service in Agent Orange, they were often denied the full healthcare coverage they needed, and frankly, that they earned.
This study could change everything. It provides the hard scientific proof that's been missing, and with it, there's now a clear path forward. The evidence goes to national review boards. They can give it official recognition. And if that happens, the final, most important step becomes possible. These veterans finally get the service-connected care they have been fighting for so long.
And so, that's where we're left. For 50 years, these veterans have lived with the consequences of this poison. Now, the science has finally caught up to their reality. The genetic fingerprints are undeniable. The only question left is, when will policy finally catch up to the science?